Okay, so in the last episode, we talked about how horrible public schools have been for religious people, including Christians.
Okay.
So the response to public schools being terrible seems to have been Christian private schools, which opens up a whole other can of worms, which we're getting into today. Okay. So, do you think Christian private schools existing, we'll get to homeschool later.
Right.
Do you think Christian private schools existing is good? Or is a good idea, or was ever a good idea?
All right. I think there's pros and cons to it.
Okay, there's only cons, but keep going.
All right. So there are some very good Christian private schools. Okay. And there are some really bad ones. All right. So I am in favor of them existing.
Okay.
All right. And so, but I am not going to sit here and tell you that every one of them offers the highest quality of education.
Okay.
But then again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you every public school is going to offer you the highest quality of education either. You got some really good public schools and some that are not so good.
So in the context of all of the things that you hate about public school, what are the pros of Christian school?
Okay. So using a big blanket statement of all the things I hate.
Right.
So if you've not listened to the previous episode, please go listen to it, or you won't know what I'm talking about.
So prayer out of schools, Bible reading out of schools.
All right. No. In fairness, I didn't say I hated that.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So,
but the things that not you, but like Christians
in general.
Christians in general.
Okay.
Their response to what they hated.
Right. Sure.
Was Christian schools. So evolution and gender, race critical studies. All of that stuff happening at public schools now. Well, screw that. We're sending our kid to Christian school.
Right. And I want to make sure I hit this too, because this is one of those little dark secrets. There are both private schools and Christian private schools that began or that were formed because segregation.
Right. We talked about this.
Yeah, we talked about that before. So, so there are some private schools and some Christian private schools that exist because of racism, if we're going to call it that. Let's just call it for what it is. And so obviously their origins, not good. But obviously not every Christian school started because of that either. And we've seen more and more Christian schools come into existence in the last, I think especially the last 20 years. It just seems like there's just been a plethora of Christian schools popping up everywhere for the last 20 years, maybe 30 years. And out of a response of what they're seeing in the public schools.
Every church has a school attached to it now.
There's a lot of
the pastor isn't bringing in enough tithe money.
Let's get a school, get some more money in. So yeah, there are those schools that exist that again aren't offering again the best education, but in regards to the things you said I hate, but are they schools in which you will not hear critical theory being taught or at least being pushed? Yes. So is that a pro? Is that a positive for me? Sure. But I would hope that, and again, I love education. My wife's an educator, and so we value education to a pretty large degree. So I guess what concerns me is you have Christian schools that have started out of a response of some of the things that they deem either all like the moral bad things that are happening in public schools, but a lot of those same bad moral things are happening in Christian private schools too. And so,
and other different stuff.
Right. And so, I think you can have a response. All right, we're going to start a new school to have better morals, have better teachings that won't deviate or from what we believe Scripture is telling us. all fine and good, but I do worry about just at times the overall just education level.
Yes.
And so, but
preach, Pastor Joe.
But again, I wrestle with that because it's hard. Like my wife, who is so big into education, loved teaching, and so she teaches our kids today. We homeschool, but she was a public school teacher for 7 years. And those last couple of years, it became really hard for her to teach, even though she's a good school teacher. So I don't blame the teachers for all this stuff, by the way, necessarily the things that are happening in schools, because, she loved teaching, but like when you have class sizes of up to 40 kids,
mm-hmm.
It's really hard to teach. And that
40 kids?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, she had classes that were huge. And so if you got class sizes that are in the, from 35 to 40 or whatever, and it's really hard to teach.
Mm.
You're more like classroom managing. And if you've got 3 classes of those, so you've got, let's say 100 students, and now you've got to, are you going to give paper assignments, big research assignments for all of those kids? Boy, that's going to be a ton of grading.
Right.
And she would do it. But I mean, Lord, she was working like nonstop, like on the weekends and at nights, grading all these papers. But then, because the easier thing to do would just, let's do a Scantron test, fill A, B, C, D, fill the little bubble. And so a lot of teachers do that. And she would do that sometimes too, because she just had to, out of necessity of time. So my point just being is, even when you have really good quality teachers, they're not always availed the opportunity to exercise that gift, to teach. So therefore, you don't always end up with the best quality of education in a public school system, even if you have good quality teachers there. So it's just I don't know, man, our public school system is a mess as far as I'm concerned. But then, in fairness, again, private schools don't always hit the mark either.